I started a YouTube channel because news is making everyone dumber on the left, center, and right. Next up on Game Theory today.
Guys, it's time for some game theory.
Hi there, it's Eric Garland back again. I'm a guy that likes to read the news, and I'm in the business of intelligence. For almost 30 years now, I've been an intelligence analyst and otherwise in the business of it, collecting it, giving it to people, stuff like that. Basically, I like information, just like you. I happen to like it real accurate and real useful, and so do my clients. So really, I'm kind of in the news business, but I don't like comparing myself to that because I don't like the news at all. There's a bunch of stuff called news that, just think of the framework. It's like, this is new. They put it in front of you, and they say, look at it. This is what you should be looking for. This is what you should be looking at. And then they have opinion 80% of the way through that says, here's how you should think about that. But more importantly, here's how you should feel about that. And if you've noticed, especially since the 1990s, where we replaced kind of authoritarian news, after your 8 hours at the factory, come in at 6 p.m. and a white man in a suit will read things in a bassy sort of masculine voice that is authoritative, a little bit grandpa-ish, not too harsh, and tell you that we're in Vietnam for reasons no one can explain. This is thought of as the golden age of news, I guess. And then in the 90s, we started slicing everybody up by different proclivities cognitively, whether they were more into paternalistic authoritarianism with some masculine overtones or more nurturing feminine overtones. And this is also how we were slicing up the cognitive message targeting of Republicans and Democrats in the United States and whatnot. And the news started going this way. So in the 90s, we moved from this all broadcast in the air thing, where the frequencies were caught like on a radio. But you remember, for you super old people, you remember the rabbit ears on the TV. That was your TV was picking up signals that were broadcast out for everyone. These were publicly used frequencies that were regulated by the government, and that transitioned at the end of the 80s and in the 90s into what's known as cable television. That cable had to be laid there by a private company, and so it no longer required the Fairness Doctrine, and that is when news started really shattering. And so most notably, we got this Australian, Scottish, UK guy named Rupert Murdoch, who had been, I gather, somehow involved with the Reagan administration and got like a fast track to becoming an American citizen. Anyways, he gets settled in the 90s and immediately goes hard right on cable television and starts feeding people a line of news that was deliberately and kind of obviously partisan. And of course, they cover it with fair and balanced. We report, you decide. But really, it's just a cognitive framework that was then duplicated, on all sides by different cognitive frameworks. Now, again, you could go back to the golden age, supposedly, of the 1960s of Walter Cronkite, or the 1980s, Dan Rather, Tom Brokaw from South Dakota. And you've got, really the official news story that's taken from the Associated Press, various wires, New York Times, Washington Post, and all of this has a certain coherence to it. We're not quite sure what the angle is, and it's not as nakedly partisan, but it's a framework, certainly. 90s comes up, you've got cable television, where it's going kind of political party by political party. Fox News was definitely a Republican outlet. And then you had the other news that really didn't need to play by the Fairness Doctrine either, notably MSNBC, which was a mix of the National Broadcasting Corporation, NBC, and MS standing for Microsoft, which is a software company that has significant ties with the US government, but also, got in bed with the Chinese very early, has a few Russian ties here and there. It's kind of a mixed bag, really. But the MSNBC types really went for kind of a younger boomer demographic, and then eventually much more democratic in nature. And so then you've got kind of a fake center that is occupied supposedly by maybe National Public Radio or the Washington Post. And none of this covers the fact that it's dumb and it's making us stupider. That none of these outlets have good information. That's the problem for you folks. Not that it is partisan, although that's an issue, but that is dumb. And they cover things that are emotional and not the point. They have no basis in fact. Like, for example, everyone's telling you about how Elon Musk and DOGE, they have taken over the US government and they're firing people who shouldn't be fired and it's terrible and just feel really bad about this. They got rid of 1,000 people at the Veterans Administration, and the news never sits down and tells you how many people work at the Veterans Administration, 422,000. They never tell you how people are hired, how they normally get fired, how difficult that is. When was the last time we had a downside? You know, researching something and reporting on it? No. We've got to lead off with telling you how to feel about this. And that is when you should keep one hand on your wallet, slow everything down, and ask, what's going on and who benefits from this? To get at the who benefits question, I guess you always have to look at the money. First would be the sponsors. You've got the people who are running ads in between all the other cognitive framework information, or news, as you might call it. So you have these people who are telling you how to feel about things and perchance how to feel about the economy, which will make you want to buy things. And then they shove another bunch of images and stories in your face about things you might buy, which these are really the same product when you think about it. Whether you're looking at Joe and Mika in the morning on MSNBC or whatever the chicks in the red dresses and the idiot white guys in the blue suits on Fox News are called today, doesn't matter. It's all like the same three Montgomery Ward store mannequins. They are selling a product on that news program. Sometimes they're actually pitching products or telling stories about Elon Musk and all of his companies, again, which is basically free advertising for all of his companies, but nobody thinks of it that way. Then they have other companies that shove their products in front of you with a story about them, but these kind of blend together really easily if you think about it. So there's the sponsors, but then there's whoever is behind the corporations. Most major corporations in the United States, certainly the giant media conglomerates, there's like 5 major ones on earth, they represent a lot of elite capital that is really maybe global in nature. They have more in common with each other. God, it's starting to sound like communism. This is some Karl Marx stuff that he got into. Not necessarily wrong, by the way. But anyhow, you get guys like Rupert Murdoch that own all these media outlets in like multiple countries around the globe. And, they don't get broken up. They're not forced to compete or anything. They're able to break the rules on owning TV stations and newspapers in the same town, all this stuff. They're their own set of advertisers. What are they advertising for? The end of democracy? Just kidding. I'm not kidding. This is a group of people funded more or less by the same types of folks in the world, not very many, and people that have a lot of money. I mean, like the real amount of money, not the amount you're thinking of 100 times, whatever you're thinking of 100 times that. This is their product, and their product is you staying calm about whatever they're doing to your jobs, to your house, to the environment, to the political institutions. The product here in news is you, and you staying nice and calm while they do whatever they want. And this is why the news is just as dumb, left, center, and right, because the product is always the same, and it's you. Now, to get back to why I started the video here and how I started it, why do I have a YouTube channel? It's because I don't do that. I'm just here to pitch you actual information, which is, by the way, what intelligence is. Intelligence would not really need to exist if the news were particularly good, right? Decision makers, whether it's private industry, military is a little bit different. Those guys need very, very specific news on very specific people. But government intelligence, even national security issues, if the news were particularly good and accurate, you might not need 50% of the intelligence products out there. But, the way news is, you do, because some information is way better than other information. And so that's my business. In my estimation, news is just not doing it for you folks because they're not telling you the basic stuff that is true. Now, that sounds solipsistic. It sounds overly simple. But take, for example, they're having you freak out over this guy, Pete Hegseth, who's Secretary of Defense. And look, he is not exactly my idea of Secretary of Defense. I don't know who's supposed to be. I guess Donald Rumsfeld. We had him twice. I'm not sure he's really the archetype. Robert McNamara, he was an incredible intellectual. He helped start the World Future Society. But he also got us really neck deep in Vietnam. So I don't know if that's really what we're after either. But anyways, this Hegseth guy is really kind of a knucklehead. But the news is coming out and saying, oh, he's changing the name of these forts back from Fort Moore and Fort Liberty, which are such good names, even though no one can remember where the hell they are, whereas everybody knew where Fort Bragg and Fort Benning were. Oh, he's changing them back to Fort Bragg and Fort Benning. Yeah, but they missed the fact that he's not changing them back to Fort Braxton Bragg, but Fort Roland Bragg. Braxton Bragg was a Confederate officer who owned slaves. Roland Bragg was a Nazi fighter from Maine. That's interesting. So we swapped the guy out. We managed to kind of pour a little oil in the water for some of our southern friends, our fellow citizens. And they did the same thing in Benning. Fort Benning went back to another Benning who was not a Confederate officer, but who fought the Germans in World War I. So if you remember having worked at Fort Bragg, been stationed at Fort Bragg or Fort Benning, and it's really important to you, and they changed the name, which got you up in arms because, they're trying to erase our Southern heritage or something, or they're just messing around with the Department of Defense for political reasons, which, is not an unreasonable take, I don't think. You've changed it back to something everybody knows, and it's kind of cool. And this kind of lowers the political temperature, but you've actually deleted the Confederate ties. I mean, that's really slick. That's certainly not the story they have about the Trump administration. And look, you don't have to tell me twice that the Trump thing is weird, right? Okay? I've kind of been opposed to these people. I mean, he's got Stephen Miller in there again. Like, I got it. These are not my guys. But the news might tell you that this is interesting. These guys who are not, who we might think of, they're not the archetypes a lot of people might go for. They're doing something really clever that manages to kind of improve the climate politically, but also move us ahead. So we're not pissing off the Confederates, but we're not honoring them anymore either. That's pretty good. But that story's not out there. Here's another one you wouldn't think of. Trump comes out and is going, drill, baby, drill. Well, okay, but remember who we're really up against in the world. We don't really have a military adversary, per se. The Russians are, they can't even take over Ukraine, a country, as I pointed out in past videos, that they used to own, and half the people there speak their language and all this other stuff. They can't do that. They're not going to invade Akron. I don't think they're going to make it to Denver, guys. The Russians aren't. Neither are the Chinese. The Chinese are busy trying to feed themselves, right? So really what we have are ideological enemies, like, let's say the Saudis, or even the Emirates, or anybody with, royalty, who make a lot of money and have slaves still. Well, what do all these countries have in common there? Fossil fuels. So when Trump goes, drill, baby, drill, we're actually, around the world, we are transitioning to renewable energy super fast, because behind the scenes, there's a lot of people panicking about the climate change stuff. They are getting their butt in gear to do it right, because it's really not an option. The world's going to change in ways that we can't predict what the soil's going to do. No one really wants 2 or 3 billion people starving, right? But we also do not want to fund authoritarian states like Russia, Saudi, Emirates, those folks. We don't want to give them money anymore. So Trump needs to go drill, baby, drill. The French are specializing in nuke power again, solar. They're starting, I think they're on the cusp of exporting green energy. We're making progress, people. And the drill, baby, drill is so America keeps that cash because, hey, did you gas up this week? I did. Unless you have an electric car right now, which, hey, good on you. You're part of the future here. There's plenty of fossil fuel-driven cars out there right now. And someone is going to need to supply it. Well, we don't want that money coming from Iran or going to Iran, Venezuela, Russia. Saudi. We don't want that anymore. So, the story about Trump going drill, baby, drill, they're not going to tell you that that is actually part of a national strategy to starve autocracies of much needed cash, which they just flow right back into our real estate, right back into our stock market and mess with us. But nobody on the news is telling you that. Now, are they? Another thing that's really key about the stories of the renaming of the military installations and America pumping more petroleum is that neither one of those takes is particularly partisan. They're strategic. Strategically, we want our political discourse to be less hot. We don't want any more January 6th. Not on the left, not on the right, not in the center, if any of that even exists. As a country, we do not want to sort things out with pitchforks. And you know who wants us to sort them out with pitchforks? Foreign enemies, drug cartels, terrorist groups. They want us to stab each other. They want Alabama fighting with Massachusetts. Russia put the Communist Party of the United States headquarters in Alabama. I mean, do the math, people, right? This is not hard. Our enemies have always wanted us fighting. Hey, who backed up the South in the Civil War? Oh, that'd be the United Kingdom. Yeah, did they find a bunch of weapons from the United Kingdom right near Appomattox Courthouse? Why, I believe they did. Something like that. Our enemies want us fighting. So the story of how we figured out how to keep the names of these military bases and not piss off our southern compatriots here, but also move ahead, that's not partisan. That's really domestic security. That's just a good story as far as I'm concerned. And the story of putting less money into the pocket of the Russians and the Iranians and the Venezuelans, that's not partisan. But we're supposed to believe that petroleum is somehow a partisan issue, even though everybody uses petroleum in some form. If you don't, if you have an electric car, congrats. By the way, if you have plastics, you've used petroleum. Or either way, we all benefit from an industrialized society that uses petroleum all over the place. It's not a partisan issue. It's a strategic issue. And the news doesn't cut things up like that. And don't get me started on how the news deals with national security. It makes my head hurt. Here's something we're hearing because Trump had Zelensky, and I did a video on this, and he's like, you should say thank you. And he's acting his normal Queen's wrestling heel thing, right? Our allies have all abandoned us. And also, Ukraine's our greatest ally ever, and they're the leader of the free world. And this is just all complete nonsense. Trump said something slightly aggressive about NATO, how they need to spend more money on defense. They need to pay more money, which of course they spend on their home soil, or they generally buy military hardware from us or the UK or France, something like that, which means it goes to our bottom line as well. The news is telling us that America has abandoned NATO. But if it were real news, they might include the fact that we're doing joint exercises with all these countries as we speak. And we're really leading the NATO alliance. And we're negotiating with the Russians because America is in charge of the whole damn thing. Because we're the most powerful country in the history of everything. Sorry, we've been beat about the head and neck for decades trying to talk our way around this. But everybody knows it. And everybody serious operates from that point of view. That's where that is why they are constantly trying to manipulate our electorate. That's why you are being psyoped constantly, so you don't realize that your civilization in America took over the rest of the world. Most of the world speaks our language, English. Oh, is it the official language? Is it not the official language? You know how you know it's the official language? We have all the money, and everybody speaks English around the world to get around. The term lingua franca really meant French. It means French language in Latin, which tells you a few things. One, that people used to use Latin a lot, and that people used to mainly use French. And now the lingua franca is not French or Latin, it's English. And we could call it the English language, but we already call it the English language. What, the lingua britannica? Anyways, it doesn't matter. We won. We took over the world. Now we actually have to manage it properly. But that is a discussion that people don't want us having. That America is an incredibly successful idea. We hold these truths to be self-evident. We should probably treat everybody correctly under the law, treat everybody the right way, no matter how much money they have. We keep failing at this, but it's a great idea. People like it. And there are certain powers inside this country and outside of this country that want us talking about anything but that. So if they get 5 seconds, they're going to tell you that America has abandoned its alliances while it's working every single day on military interoperability with its allies. Now, go back to the central point here. Is that the news? Telling you what to think? Bereft of actual information? Telling you that America has abandoned its allies while it's working every day with its allies? That make any sense? Yeah, so the news wants to make everything partisan, and I actually think our deep state, if you will, because there is such a thing of the actual serious people running institutions for the benefit of all. The actual deep state, I think, is leaning into this whole partisan thing. Like, fine, you want Republicans? You'll have Republicans. We can make them say lines too. That's kind of my read of these things these days. You know how I know? Is because the Republicans are like, yeah, we're anti-cartel all of a sudden. Let me tell you, about 12 years ago, nobody was really anti-cartel except for people way behind the scenes. And the cartels basically took this country over. It's very awkward. A lot of people don't want to talk about it. But transnational organized crime is the biggest threat this country and any country has ever faced. And they damn near toppled this nation with some foreign help. The Republicans are the ones who are all about it. And it's kind of in this interesting cowboy, pseudo-racist flavor, theme that they have going right now. Kristi Noem gets out there and she's got her little cowgirl hat and she gets on horseback to go down to the border and go, I wanted to check out the border security problem and the migrants issue personally. It's like, have you not heard of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency? Lady, we have satellites. We can send you pictures. We have drones. We can send you 8K video. All of this. You don't need to get on horseback unless you want to, because it's fun and you look fun. So the Republicans are taking the lead on all this anti-cartel stuff, and it has made my friends very nervous. I've had to do a lot of therapy time here as an intelligence analyst, making people feel better that no, they're not just going to come get your neighbors here. They're getting the dudes with like 94 face tattoos who are dangerous as hell, and those are the guys going to Gitmo. They're not going to get, Juanito who makes your tacos. He's not the problem here. He's not carting enough fentanyl to kill Ohio. Other dudes are. And right now, it is a golden age for wrapping up transnational organized crime. We got the heads of the Sonora cartel, MSNBC. That was a Freudian slurp. I did not intend there. MS-13. I wonder if there's a connection. But Sonora cartel, Guadalajara, Ndrangheta, Camorra, Chinese triads. We are wrapping all of them up. Did you know that from watching the news? Are you seeing that we are taking down 4 or 5 decades of the worst offenders in the drug war? People that killed your cousin, people that got your dad addicted to pain meds after his back injury. These are bad guys that led to heroin deals, that led to human trafficking, just the worst stuff. They're going down in flames. It's like a golden age for national security. Would you know that from turning on television? And don't get me started on the economy. They started pouring all of this money into the stock market, both your pension and the state workers, unions, pension, and then a bunch of foreign capital and maybe some Iranian oil money that walked on the lot. It all goes into this big casino called the stock market, and then they called that economic news. Now, meanwhile, you're working 70 hours to make what you used to make in 38 hours, and you don't know how you're going to retire. And they say, oh, the stock market went up, and that's the economic news. But is it? The real news is that you had to work 68 hours this week, and you don't know about retirement. Whereas your granddad, worked at a stonemason shop, and he did know how he was going to retire. That's the real economic news. So, a lot of my public persona is because in 2016, everybody was panicking about what the hell is going on with this Trump guy. He has a lot of weirdos around him. And the news were telling you that this was all about Hillary Clinton failed to campaign in Wisconsin where she campaigned. I want you to run that back. Run that back. Remember, it was the Wisconsin butter emails. She didn't handle cybersecurity well enough as Secretary of State. And of course, nobody reported on how cybersecurity is supposed to be done. Or what did other secretaries of state do for cybersecurity? What did the chief information officers around the various agencies, what did they do about this? What's the NSA's role in this? No, it was just her emails. That was the story. Then they had to do an FBI thing about her emails. But we didn't get stories about like how email servers are kept or how laptops work or Blackberries or how when we went from Blackberries to maybe the iPhone or whatever. We didn't get any news about that story. And then otherwise they said, Hillary failed to campaign in Wisconsin where she campaigned. And everybody just swallowed this until I stepped forward on December 11th, 2016, and I said, hey guys, time for some game theory. Game theory being strategic simulation. Let us play Russia. I'll play Russia. You think of China. This guy will play Israel. This guy will play Iran. This will be NATO. We'll be the United States. Let's do a strategic simulation. What's going on? Russia is attacking our democracy. So are others. There's foreign agents all over the place. I didn't say just Russia's. I said foreign agents. I changed the framework. And pretty soon you had the Mueller investigation. They started talking about, oh, Mike Flynn has been in Moscow. Well, no kidding. Everybody in the intelligence world is like, not Mike Flynn. What's he doing here? And did we get any work? Were there any stories about Mike Flynn's work in intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance? His seminal paper on ghost hunting? And does that ring a bell at all? Did anybody talk about some of the insane things Mike Flynn did while he was working in the intelligence world? Or what he did in Afghanistan? Or what his relationship with Stanley McChrystal was? No, we just heard that he's a bad guy, which isn't very newsy. Anyways, they started talking about how he was connected to Russia because I came out and I changed the framework. 10 million people saw that in like a week. And man, the news attacked me viciously. Slate, Washington Post, New Republic, all these digital outlets, 24-year-old writers who know nothing. And one guy accused me of paranoia in the New Republic, who was literally an expert in haunted houses. Let me just try and soak that one in for half a second. Dude writes books on haunted houses, and he accused me of being paranoid because I said there's such a thing as foreign countries, and sometimes they have information operations against us. Am I getting that correct, New Republic? Nice stuff. You wonder why I start my own channel. So I realize none of this is particularly easy for you. We're going to go, what? Are we going to just call you up every morning? You're the Svengali. We've got to hang on your every word. No. If anything, all I want to do with this channel or any of these videos or any intelligence products is get you thinking, get you curious. If I can make you change your mind about a subject, you will go off by yourself and you will be curious on your own. You would not be listening to me right now if you weren't curious. Something about the title of this video, or you've watched my other videos and thought, well, this is his latest. Let's check it out. You were curious. You are perfectly capable of finding information on your own. And especially if somebody who parses through crap information day in and day out to find the really good stuff that people are going to make $1 billion or a life or death decision, which is what I do for a living. You know, if I give you the tools that I use myself and that I give to my clients, you'll go out and use them on your own. That's the whole point. Only in newsland do we want to addict people to somebody's personality. So they have to come back every night and have, I don't know, Jon Stewart or Rachel Maddow or Sean Hannity or whoever tell you how to feel about something. I mean, the guy who really invented this for the modern world was Rush Limbaugh, who was like, how can I make people feel really good about being the biggest jerk possible in society, but particularly to their other family members? Rush Limbaugh was just... He was truly a historic great in this regard. But I'm not here to do that. I'm here to give you tools and maybe some tidbits of information that I have gleaned from my tools, and then you can go out and make your own decisions. It's almost like that is what we need in a free republic. That is what we need in a democracy. It's not me knowing everything. Because look, I know a ton of stuff, and I'm a moron. I make terrible decisions sometimes. I know I'm here. So I can't be in charge of everything. The point is, give you all more tools to go out and think about things, how to look up certain databases, how to get beyond the news frameworks that they're giving you, so you can make your decisions about what you want to think about. And then we'll have a better democracy. I ain't never met you, and I already trust you. Because that's how free democracies work, is we let people be their own geniuses, take their own counsel, and talk with each other in a respectful manner, have some disagreements that they can try and get by giving each other both respect and other points of view and new information. And the news, my friends, they are not paid to help us with that, and they ain't helping us. So we are here to help ourselves. So I could go on about this all night, and I might be tempted to, but I'm going to stop here. Hey, what is your favorite news source that is not major news? Or heck, if there is a major news figure that you just love to pieces, tell me why. Or tell me what kind of information you want or what kind of tools you want in the comments. And I'll be here for the next video, which won't be about the process, but it'll be about something interesting in and of itself. Thanks for being with me tonight. It's always a great time. Take care.